The massive space station drifted silently through the void, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light. Inside, Veltor sat hunched over his monitoring console, his 6 eyes focused on the holographic display showing a small blue planet. His long fingers moved across the controls as he reviewed the latest data from Earth. Making noise, he muttered in disgust. The translator device on his neck converted his alien words into the common galactic language. 200 years of watching these humans, and they only get louder. Velthar belonged to the Zephyrian Collective, an ancient alliance of 12 alien species that had been watching the galaxy for thousands of years. They believed in something called the Great Silence, the idea that truly advanced civilizations would eventually stop using noisy technologies and either transcend to a higher plane of existence or destroy themselves trying. The humans were what they called loud ones. Every day Earth sent out radio signals, launched rockets with chemical engines that roared through space, and even exploded nuclear weapons for testing. It was chaos. It was primitive. It was everything the collective believed advanced species should move beyond. "Hi, Observer," a younger voice called out. Keshra approached his station carefully, her forearms carrying data tablets. Unlike Velthor, she was still curious about the humans rather than simply disgusted by them. "What is it now?" Velthor asked, without looking up from his display. "The humans are building something new, something big." Keshra set down her tablets and pulled up a new set of readings. "Look at these gravitational measurements from their outer solar system." Velthor glanced at the data briefly. More primitive construction projects. They build space stations like children building toys. "But sir, this is different. The energy readings are massive. They're moving asteroids, redirecting comets, building structures we can't fully identify from this distance. Irrelevant." Velthar waved one of his primary arms dismissively. "The prediction models are clear. They will achieve silence within the next few decades. Either they will transcend and join the galactic community properly, or they will destroy themselves with their own weapons. Both outcomes bring the blessed silence we wait for." Keshra looked at her data again. Something felt wrong about the readings, but she couldn't put her finger on it. "Hi, Observer. What if they're not following the normal pattern? What if they're doing something we haven't seen before?" "Impossible." Velthara's voice carried the weight of centuries of experience. "We have watched 10,000 species across the galaxy. The pattern is always the same. They develop technology, they become loud and chaotic, and then they either transcend or destroy themselves. The humans are no different." Far below on Earth, the truth was very different from what the collective imagined. An underground facility beneath the Korean peninsula, Admiral Nari stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire solar system. Red dots marked the positions of human colonies, space stations, and construction projects that the aliens had been monitoring. "Status report," she commanded. "Phase 1 is complete," Admiral reported, Commander Minho. "All evacuation protocols are in place. We can move the entire human population within 72 hours if needed, and the fleet. Hidden in the outer system, beyond their sensor range. The generation ships are ready to house everyone if we need to abandon Earth completely." Dr. Hejin looked up from her console. "The alien monitoring station has increased its surveillance frequency. They're definitely watching us more closely now." Nari nodded grimly. "Good, let them watch. They think we're primitive, that we don't notice their observation posts. They have no idea we've been studying them just as carefully as they've been studying us. For 2 centuries, humanity had known they were being watched. At first, they had tried to make contact, sending messages and signals toward the alien monitoring stations. But the aliens never responded. It became clear that humanity was being treated like laboratory animals, interesting to observe, but not worth communicating with. So humanity had adapted. They had learned to reverse engineer alien technology from the energy signatures of their ships. They had developed new sciences based on careful observation of alien behavior. Most importantly, they had learned to be patient. "How long until we're ready for Phase 2? Nari asked. 6 months, Admiral. Maybe less if the orbital construction crews can work faster. Make it happen. If these aliens want to see what human silence looks like, we'll give them exactly what They're expecting. Back on the monitoring station, Belthar finally stood up from his console. I'm going to rest. Wake me if anything significant happens. Yes, High Observer Keshra replied. But as he left, she continued studying the human data. The gravitational readings were getting stranger. Whatever the humans were building, it was bigger than anything they had attempted before. She pulled up historical records of other species the collective had monitored. Usually there were clear signs before a species achieved transcendence or destroyed itself. But the human readings didn't match any known pattern. Deep in her alien mind, a troubling thought began to form. What if the humans weren't following the rules? What if they were planning something the collective had never seen before? She dismissed the thought quickly. Belthor was right. The humans were primitives. They would fall silent soon enough, one way or another. But her unease remained as she watched the blue planet spinning slowly in the void. I am aware that humanity was preparing for the greatest deception in galactic history. The alarm system screamed. Through the monitoring station, at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time, Keshra jolted awake in her rest pod and rushed to the main control room, her forearms working frantically across the emergency panels. High Observer. She called out as Velthor emerged from his quarters, his 6 eyes blinking in confusion. We've lost all contact with Earth. Velthor moved to his console, his movements quick, despite his usual calm demeanor. The holographic display that normally showed Earth's busy radio signals, heat signatures from cities, and spacecraft movements was completely empty. Nothing, not even static. When did this happen? He demanded. 7 minutes ago. Everything just stopped. Keshra's voice carried a tremor of fear. No radio transmissions, no thermal readings from their cities, no movement from their space stations. All just vanished. Velthor studied the readings carefully. In his long life, he had seen many species reach their end. Some destroyed themselves in nuclear fire, leaving radiation signatures that lasted for centuries. Others transcended to higher planes of existence, leaving behind traces of exotic energy. But this was different. This was complete silence. Finally, he said, though his voice lacked its usual satisfaction, the loud ones have achieved their fate. Either transcendence or extinction, both bring the blessed silence we have waited for. But Sir Keshra protested. This doesn't match any pattern we've seen before. Look at these readings from Luna Station, from Mars Colony, from their asteroid. Mining operations. They all went silent at exactly the same moment. How is that possible? Belthor examined the data more closely. She was right. Every human settlement, every orbital platform, every deep space outpost had disappeared simultaneously. Not destroyed, simply gone. The timing was too perfect, too coordinated. Perhaps they achieved a collective transcendence, he suggested, though doubt crept into his voice. Some species have been known to ascend together. Ours passed as they tried to understand what had happened. The other monitoring stations reported the same phenomenon. Humanity's colonies around Proxima Centauri, their research stations in the Alpha Centauri system. Their long-range exploration vessels all had vanished without a trace. Deploy Investigation Fleet Gamma, Velthar finally commanded. We must determine what happened to them. The fleet of 12 collective vessels departed immediately, their crews expecting to find either empty worlds or the ethereal remains of a transcended species. Captain Mordok, commanding the flagship, was a veteran observer who had investigated the disappearance of 17 different species over his career. Estimated arrival at Sol System in 6 standard days, he reported back to the monitoring station. While they waited, Keshra continued studying the data. Something bothered her about the readings, but she couldn't identify what. The gravitational measurements she had been tracking for months showed massive structures in the outer solar system, but now those readings were gone too. High Observer, she said carefully, what if they didn't transcend or destroy themselves? What if they did something else, such as, I don't know. But in all our records, we've never seen a species disappear so completely and so suddenly. Usually, there are signs, warnings, gradual changes. This was instant, and total. Belther dismissed her concerns with a wave of his arm. You worry too much, Junior Observer. Right. The humans were primitives. They could not have achieved anything beyond the normal patterns. 6 days later, Captain Mordoc's report came through the communication array. Sol system reached. Planets remain in their orbits, but all human presence has been surgically removed. No debris fields, no residual energy signatures, no trace of their technology. Earth appears completely uninhabited, as if they were never there. Impossible, Velthar muttered. Show me the surface scans. The holographic display filled with images of Earth. The continents were there, the oceans were blue and clean, but the cities were gone, not destroyed, simply absent. Where New York had been, there was now pristine forest. Where Sol had sprawled across the landscape, there were only empty plains. It was as if someone had carefully erased every trace of human civilization. What about their space-based installations? Keshra asked. Gone. The International Space Station, their lunar bases, their Mars colonies, all missing. But the planets themselves are undamaged. This level of precision, Captain Mordoc's voice trailed off. Meanwhile, in the deep void between stars, Admiral Nari stood on the bridge of the generation ship New Sol, watching her tactical display. The collective investigation fleet had entered the Sol system exactly as predicted. Round her, the massive human fleet remained hidden. Their ships, using advanced stealth technology reverse-engineered from decades of studying alien vessels. All. Ships report ready, Admiral. Commander Minho whispered from his station. Excellent. Are our people safe? Every human settlement has been evacuated and consolidated into the generation ships. 18 billion people, all hidden in the void, waiting for your signal. Dr. Hyjin looked up from her console. The alien fleet is conducting detailed scans. Of Earth, they're completely baffled by what they're seeing. Nari allowed herself a small smile. 200 years of preparation. You think we're gone? That we've somehow vanished like all the other species they've watched disappear? They have no idea that we've been planning this moment since we first detected their surveillance. Admiral Minho reported, the investigation fleet is moving toward the outer system. They're following the gravitational anomalies we left behind. Perfect. Let them come. It's time to show the Watchers what human silence really means. In the darkness of space, the human fleet began to move. The space around Investigation Fleet Gamma suddenly blazed with brilliant white light. Captain Mordecai's eyes widened in terror as massive shapes materialized from the darkness around his 12 ships. These weren't ordinary vessels, they were enormous battle stations, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls covered in weapons and technologies he had never seen before. Collective command, Mordock screamed into his communication device. We are surrounded, humans. They're not extinct, they're here. His tactical officer's voice shook with fear. Captain, I'm reading 47 ships. No, wait, 63. They keep appearing out of nowhere. On the bridge of the massive human flagship New Sol, Admiral Nari watched the alien fleet's panicked movements with cold satisfaction. Her own bridge was filled with humans working calmly at their stations, their faces showing the determination. That came from 2 centuries of careful planning. Open all communication channels, she commanded. Let's introduce ourselves properly. Her voice carried across every frequency as she broadcast to the shocked collective fleet. Attention, collective. Vessels. I am Admiral Nari of the United Earth Fleet. You've been watching us for 2 centuries, waiting for us to fall silent. You studied us like insects in a jar, convinced we were too primitive to notice your surveillance stations hanging in our. Sky Commander Minho monitored the enemy fleet's desperate attempts to call for help. Their communications are being jammed, Admiral. The network infiltration is working perfectly. Good Nari continued her broadcast, her voice calm but filled with steel. We've been watching you too, learning from your technology, studying your methods, preparing for this exact moment. Every human settlement you observed was evacuated and moved to generation ships hidden in the void between stars. We knew you would come to investigate our silence. On his flagship, Captain Mordock frantically tried to understand what was happening. His sensors showed impossible readings. The human ships were using energy sources that bent space and time. Their shields existed in multiple dimensions at once. Their weapons could apparently tear holes in reality itself. "How is this possible?" he whispered to his tactical officer. "They were primitives. They used chemical rockets." "Sir, they're hailing us directly." Narice's image appeared on Mordok's main screen. She was younger than he had expected, with short black hair and determined eyes. Behind her, he could see a bridge filled with advanced technology that made his own ship look like a child's toy. "Captain Mordok," she said, and he was startled that she knew his name. "We know who you are. We know your ship's capabilities. Your crew size, even your personal history. We've been preparing for this conversation for a very long time." "This is impossible," Mordok stammered. "You cannot have developed such technology so quickly. It takes thousands of years to advance from chemical rockets to dimensional manipulation." "You're right," Nari agreed. "It does take thousands of years if you develop it naturally. But we had teachers. We had your own ships to study every time you came to observe us. You learned to reverse engineer your technology from the energy signatures you left behind." Dr. Hedgen's voice came through the bridge speakers. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildup in the enemy fleet. They're preparing to attack." "Let them try," Nari replied calmly. "Activate demonstration protocols." The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. Instead of attacking the alien ships, they began a display that left the collective observers speechless. Energy beams reached out into empty space and began pulling matter from the void itself. Massive construction arrays deployed from the human ships and started building structures in real time. "What are they doing?" Mordok asked his science officer. They're rebuilding Earth. Right here in open space. They're creating matter from pure energy and assembling it into a planet." The display lasted only 10 minutes, but it was enough. A small but perfect replica of Earth hung in space near the human fleet, complete with continents, oceans, and even weather patterns. Then, just as quickly, the humans disassembled it back into pure energy. "This is our message to you, Captain," Nari said. "We didn't transcend to some higher plane of existence. We didn't destroy ourselves with our own weapons. We evolved. We grew stronger by staying loud, staying chaotic, staying human. We refused to accept the limitations that your great silence demands." High Observer Velthor's voice suddenly crackled through the communication system from the distant monitoring station. "This is impossible. You are primitives," the Great Silence demands that advanced species abandon such crude displays of power. "The Great Silence," Nari replied, her voice carrying to both fleets, "is about to become the Great Symphony. But first, we have an offer for you, Captain Mordok." "What kind of offer?" "We don't want war. We want recognition. We want a seat at your galactic table. We want an end to your quarantine of Earth and every other world you've been watching." Nari's image leaned forward. "We know about the others, Captain. We know about the 47 species you've quarantined. We know about the civilizations you've guided into extinction. We know about the resources you've stolen from developing worlds." Mordok felt his heart sink. "How could you possibly know?" "About classified collective operations. So we've been inside your computer networks for decades. We have all the evidence. Every secret file, every hidden directive, every crime your collective has committed in the name of the Great Silence." The human fleet began to move into attack formation. But Nari's next words surprised everyone. "Join us willingly, and we'll help you reform the collective into something better. Fight us, and we'll broadcast your crimes to every world in the galaxy." The thunder of human engines filled the void as the fleet prepared for whatever choice the aliens would make. High Observer Velthor's rage echoed through the emergency communication channels as he desperately tried to contact every collective battle fleet in the galaxy. His 6 eyes blazed with fury as he screamed orders into his transmitter. "All battle fleets, converge on Sector 7729 immediately. The primitives must be contained. This cannot be allowed to spread." But his calls for help went unanswered. Across collective space, something unprecedented was happening. The carefully hidden truth that the collective had buried for millennia was finally being exposed to the galaxy. Dr. Hyjin sat aboard the human intelligence vessel Insight, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she executed the most important data breach in galactic history. For months, Her team had been quietly infiltrating collective computer networks, copying files, gathering evidence of crimes that stretched back thousands of years. "Broadcasting evidence package now," she reported to Admiral Nari. "Every collective world, every member species, every quarantined planet is receiving the complete files." The evidence was overwhelming. Species that had been told they were being protected by collective oversight suddenly learned they were actually being slowly drained of resources. Developing worlds that had been guided away from dangerous technologies discovered they had been deliberately kept primitive so the collective could steal their natural wealth. Entire civilizations that had supposedly achieved transcendence had actually been quietly exterminated when they became too advanced. On the collective homeworld of Zephyria, Prime Council leader Thaxmer watched in horror as riots erupted in the capital city. Citizens who had believed in the Great Silence for generations now understood that their government had been lying to them. The sacred philosophy of transcendence through silence was revealed as a cover for systematic exploitation and genocide. "Sir," his aide reported with trembling voice, "we're receiving rebellion reports from 37 member worlds. The Andromedans have declared independence. The Crystal Collective is demanding immediate withdrawal of all our forces from their space. Even the quiet ones are breaking their vows of silence to condemn us." Meanwhile, Captain Mordok found himself trapped between the human fleet and his own crumbling government. His communication officers reported that collective command was no longer responding to their calls for reinforcement. "Captain," his tactical officer said quietly, "what are our orders?" Before Mordok could answer, Admiral Naris's voice filled his bridge again. "Captain, we're about to give you one more demonstration. This time we want you to understand exactly what human determination looks like." The human fleet began moving, with perfect coordination, but instead of preparing for battle, they were deploying massive construction arrays that dwarfed anything the collective had ever seen. Energy beams reached out across space, gathering asteroids, comets, and raw materials from the outer solar system. "What are they doing now?" Mordok asked a science officer. They're rebuilding Earth, the real Earth, in its original location." What followed was the most incredible display of technological power the galaxy had ever witnessed. Humans began reconstructing their homeworld in real time, using molecular assemblers and matter converters that worked faster than thought. Continents took shape in minutes. Oceans flowed into existence from converted asteroid ice. The atmosphere was perfectly balanced and made breathable within hours. "This is impossible," Mordok whispered. "No species can manipulate matter on this scale." "That's where you're wrong," Nari replied, her voice carrying clearly through the communication system. "We didn't transcend beyond physical reality. We mastered it. We refused to accept the limitations that your great silence demanded. We stayed loud, we stayed chaotic, we stayed human, and we grew stronger because of it." As Earth rebuilt itself before their eyes, Captain Jae-sung's voice came through the fleet communication system. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. From the quarantine zone around Kepler 44-b, the melodic chorus species is requesting immediate assistance. They say they've been trying to contact the outside galaxy for 3 centuries, but their signals were being blocked." "Dispatch Rescue Fleet 7, Nari commanded. "It's time to start keeping our promises." But the most shocking moment came when Junior Observer Keshra suddenly transmitted from the monitoring station, "Admiral Nari. This is Keshra of the Collective Monitoring Station. I am transmitting all my access codes and intelligence files to your fleet. I want to help." Velther spun around in fury. "Keshra, what are you doing? You are betraying everything we stand for." "No," Keshra replied, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm finally standing for something, right? I've been watching species disappear for decades, telling myself it was natural evolution. But it wasn't. We were murdering them." She transmitted crucial intelligence about every quarantined world, every hidden collective base, every species that was scheduled for guided extinction in the coming years. "Admiral," she continued, "there are 47 worlds under active quarantine. 17 species are marked for termination within the next solar cycle. If you truly mean to liberate the galaxy, you'll need this information. Nari's response was immediate. Commander Minho, prepare the liberation fleets. As the human construction project continued, Earth slowly came back to life. Cities rebuilt themselves from stored molecular patterns. Forests grew and fast-forward. Rivers carved their familiar paths across the restored continents. Nari said finally, "You have a choice. Join us in building something better, or watch as your collective crumbles under the weight of its own crimes." Mordok looked at his crew, saw the hope in their eyes, and made his decision. "Admiral, we surrender, and we request permission to join your liberation effort." The thunder of human engines filled space as the fleet prepared to carry freedom to every corner of the galaxy. 6 months after the liberation of Earth, the galaxy had transformed into something unrecognizable. The ancient Defrean collective had collapsed completely. Its member species either joining the new Galactic Liberation Front or withdrawing to their homeworlds in shame. The quarantine stations that had once imprisoned developing civilizations now served as refugee centers and medical facilities. Captain Jasoon stood on the bridge of the Liberation Vessel Harmony as it approached Kepler 44b, home to a species called the Melodic Chorus. These beings had been silenced for over 3 centuries. Their beautiful songs blocked by collective interference technology that prevented their communications from reaching space. Beginning first contact protocols, he announced to his crew, "Dr. Sa-young, are the translation systems ready?" "Yes, Captain. We've been studying their musical language patterns for weeks. I think we can communicate with them." The planet below was covered in crystalline structures that sparkled in the light of their twin suns. As the Harmony entered orbit, something incredible happened. The entire planet began to sing. Millions of voices joined together in a harmony so beautiful that several crew members began to cry. They remember Dr. Sa-young whispered in amazement. After 300 years of forced silence, they still remember how to sing together?
Meanwhile,
on Earth, Admiral Nari stood in the observation deck of Sol Station. Watching the constant stream of ships arriving and departing from the massive orbital facility, the sky was never quiet now. The thunder of engines from 100 different species created a symphony of sound that would have horrified the old collective. Commander Minho joined her with his daily reports. The Andromedon refugees have successfully established their first new colony. The Silicon Collective has shared their quantum computing technology with our research teams. And the Kepler Mill. He smiled broadly. They're composing a special song for the Liberation Day celebration next month. "Any word from our former prisoners?" Nuri asked. "Velthar remains in custody, but he's been cooperating with the War Crimes Tribunal. Keshra has been invaluable as head of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. She's helping dozens of species understand what was really done to them during the quarantine years." Through the massive windows of the station, they could see human children playing in the zero-gravity parks, alongside young aliens of 12 different species. Their laughter mixed with the musical conversations of the melodic chorus visitors, and the harmonic vibrations of the Crystal Collective ambassadors. Admiral Dr. Hyjin's voice came through the communication system. "We just received a priority transmission from the Outer Rim. 3 more species have broken free from their quarantine protocols. They're requesting immediate assistance." Nari nodded without hesitation. "Dispatch the thunder and the lightning. Tell Captain Dong Hyen that humanity always keeps its promises." As the 2 massive liberation ships prepared for departure, there are engines adding deep bass notes to the ongoing symphony of space traffic. Nari reflected on how much had changed. The collective had expected silence from humanity, had waited centuries for them to either transcend or destroy themselves. Instead, humanity had made the entire galaxy louder, more chaotic, and infinitely more alive. Admiral Minho said quietly, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had actually gone silent? If we had followed their great silence philosophy?" Nari considered the question as she watched a group of young Zephorians playing with human children in the observation area. These aliens had been raised to believe in the superiority of silence. But now they were laughing and shouting, just like any other kids. "I think," she said finally, "that silence is death. Growth requires noise, progress requires chaos. Life requires the courage to be loud when others demand quiet. A new ship appeared in the distance, its hull marked with the symbols of the Tau. SETI Mining Collective, another species that had been quarantined for trying to develop space travel. They had been told that their chemical rockets were too primitive and dangerous. They were arriving in ships powered by human-gifted fusion drives, carrying raw materials to help build new colonies for other liberated species. Captain Jae-sung is requesting permission to bring a delegation of melodic chorus representatives to Earth, Minho reported. Granted, it's time the galaxy heard what real music sounds like. In the depths of space, the liberation fleets continued their work. Every week brought news of another species breaking free from artificial limitations. The collective's old philosophy of enforced silence was being replaced by what the humans called the New Symphony, the idea that diversity of thought, sound, and culture created strength rather than weakness. Former collective officer Keshra, now working as a liaison between species, sent her weekly report. The Rigel Confederacy has officially joined the Liberation Front. The Vega Collective has shared their agricultural technologies. Even the former quiet ones are learning to speak again after millennia of imposed silence. As Nari prepared to leave the observation deck, she paused to watch one more ship arriving. This one carried former collective prisoners, beings who had been held in stasis for centuries, waiting for proper readjustment to the Great Silence. Now they were free, and their first act was to send out radio transmissions to anyone who would listen. Sharing their stories and their joy, the sky thundered with the engines of freedom, and the Great Silence was broken forever. In its place rose a symphony of 1,000 worlds, each singing their own song while harmonizing with all the others. Humanity had kept its loudest promise.